إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. Today is 7th of Ramadan, 1445. We continue the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, Sira Nabawiyya, a book called Al-Rahiq al-Makhtum, the sealed nectar. Brothers, if you can move forward, maybe it's actually more closer to the Sunnah, as Shaykh Al-Bani rahimahullah had said, because the Prophet ﷺ was with the companions in one of their travels, and then when they stopped for the night, each one of the companions went about their chores. One going to the right, one to the left. Each one doing his own thing because they're gonna stay there. So the Prophet ﷺ told them, he said, "Inna tafarruqakum fi الشعاب والأودية من عمل الشيطان." Surely you're spreading and going far away from each other is from the deeds of shaitan. So the companion said, after he told us that, we used to sit so close to each other that a single mat would be enough for all of us. So that's why it's and you happen to be one of my students. If it just was somebody else, you were one of my students. You no longer attend the halaqah. This is why you did that mistake. You see, you should continue attending the halaqah. Khair, inshallah. Okay. So the companion said after that, the companions to sit so close to each other, and this is the sunnah. That's why you see that in the, like if you go to Masjid Nabawi, for example, when the scholars are given lessons, the students are so close to each other because actually this closeness in body brings closeness in the heart as well. So this is just a side note. So we continue the Sira. We got to the point where Abu Talib took his nephew, the Prophet ﷺ, on a journey to Syria, but they found the monk Bahira, and Bahira basically told Abu Talib to take back the Prophet ﷺ for fear for his safety from the Jews and the Romans in Palestine if they recognized him being the Prophet ﷺ, because his description was foretold in the previous books. The next section is called the sacrilegious wars, Harb al-Fujur, the sacrilegious wars. When he ﷺ was 20 years of age, the sacrilegious wars, which continued with varying fortunes and considerable loss of human life for a number of years, broke out between different tribes. Now, why were they called sacrilegious wars? Because the Arabs, even before Islam, they used to honor the sacred months, Al-Ashhur al-Hurum, Muharram. Now, Rajab is one of the sacred months. It falls by itself. The other ones that are continuous, they are Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, and then Muharram. So in these months, the tribes would not fight among each other. So, for example, if a person from tribe A needs to travel and pass by tribe B, which is an enemy of tribe A, he would do that safely. Tribe B would not attack him. On a normal day, they would do that, but in the sacred months, they would not do that. So they honored these months, and these are the months that are mentioned in Surah Tawbah. إن عدة الشهور عند الله 12 شهرا في كتاب الله يوم خلق السماوات والأرض منها أربعة حرم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the months with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are 12. Those are the lunar months, 4 of which are sacred. So of course we Muslims are supposed to use the Hijri calendar as opposed to the Gregorian calendar, because we have been doing that for centuries until about 100 years ago, when the disbelievers were able to conquer the Muslim land as a finale for the Crusades. And after that, they brainwashed the Muslims, and you see the Muslims today, they're not really the way we're supposed to be. We Muslims today, this is not what Muslims are supposed to be. We are like androids, they're not. a copy of what a Muslim should be. So, if we go back to the way we were before, many things we'd see them that we are doing differently today. And it goes without saying that when you change some practices, your faith also changes. So basically, the sacrificial wars were between the Arabs that happened in these sacred months. So these wars were not supposed to happen, but they did happen. Not only that, but some Arabs, what did they do? Is that they would change the month. So for example, if it's Muharram, they will say, okay, this month is not going to be Muharram. We're going to postpone Muharram until the following month, and we're going to call this month, for example, Rabi' al-Awwal. Why? So that they can wage war in that month. And this is what the meaning of the ayah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُحِلُّونَهُ عَامًا وَيُحَرِّمُونَهَ عَامًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was speaking about this practice of the Arabs, that a sacred month would come, and so that they can wage war in that sacred month, they would use a ruse. So they would say, okay, it's no longer Muharram, we're going to call this month Rabi' al-Awwal. Muhammad's going to be next month. So they're going to switch the order of the months, and they would wage war in that month. And that was, of course, forbidden in Islam after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with the message of Muhammad alayhi salam. So he alayhi salam partook in these wars. Quraysh and Banu Kinana were on one side, and Qais Aylan tribe was on the other side. So it was thus called because the inviolable was made viable on those months, the prohibited months being included. As we said, they were not supposed to wage war, but they did. Harb bin Umayyah, on account of his outstanding position and honorable descent, used to be the leader of Quraysh and their allies. In one of those battles, the Prophet ﷺ assisted his uncles. His efforts were confined to picking up the arrows of the enemy as they fell and handing them over to his uncle. So he did not actually throw arrows or partake actively in the war. Then there was another thing called Al-Fudul Confederacy. This happened also in Jahiliyyah. At the conclusion of these wars, during the sacred month of Dhul Qa'dah, when peace was restored, people felt the need for forming a confederacy at Mecca so that they can suppress violence and injustice and protect the rights of the weak and the poor. Because back then was like the rule of the jungle, the strong ate up the weak. So representatives of Banu Hashim. Now, when we say Banu Hashim, we know where that's coming from, right? Because the great grandfather of Prophet ﷺ was named Hashim, okay? And that he was called that because he used to take bread and make it into small pieces. Yahshim, make it small pieces and put broth on it and then give it to the pilgrims. So Banu Hashim, Banu al-Muttalib, Asad bin Abd al-Uzza, Zahra bin Kilab, and Taym bin Murrah were called to meet in the house of an honorable elderly man called Abdullah bin Ja'd at-Taymi, so that they can enter into confederacy. What would this confederacy do? It would provide for the above mentioned items, as we said, restoring the rights of the weak and poor, suppressing violence, etc. So it was one of the good confederacies that the Prophet ﷺ said about it. After he became a messenger, he also said about this confederacy, he said, I witnessed a confederacy in the house of Abdullah bin Jad'an. It was more appealing to me than herds of cattle. That means it was a great honor and it was beloved to him that he would partake in this confederacy. Even now, in the period of Islam, I would respond positively to attending such a meeting if I were invited. So he ﷺ was telling us that such confederacy is something good to do. Now obviously this is something that Muslims are supposed to do, but of course, because of many political objections by their masters, the West, who are ruling the Muslim leaders, they don't let them do that. Therefore, the poor Muslims are being killed in droves in Palestine and elsewhere without any confederacy being formed, or not even the Muslims being allowed to go to the help of the Palestinians. If the border was open from Egypt, I tell you, if normal men and women and children just go and take a walk in Palestine, there's going to be no more Jews there. Just go take a walk. There are only like 12 million of them. Egypt by itself has 80 million. So if they let people just go there, just no weapons, just what happened in Morocco in 1975. It's called the Green March, if you brothers can Google it. Basically Morocco liberated the south of the country with a Green March. Basically they had the Quran in their hands and they marched onto the Spanish occupiers. They couldn't shoot them, and they left. So the Palestinian cause, really, this is a humiliation for the Muslims today. And subhanallah, as we will see later, the siege that was done to the Prophet ﷺ was broken by non-Muslims at the time. And that's actually what we're seeing today. And this is a great humiliation. We're seeing Irish people who are speaking for the favor of Palestinians more than the Muslim leaders are doing. They're going to be taken into account. We have to understand that. Brothers, after this war, there's going to be big trials for the Muslims. There's going to be big trials. There's going to be a lot of bloodshed. This is what the scholars have said before. Prophet ﷺ had foretold that. But that's going to be the prelude to the coming of the Khilafah once again to the Muslim Ummah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like to see this injustice. You know, when you see this injustice happening, and then the Muslims not, basically moving their armies for the protection of the civilians. Not only that, but what we call the American turbans, the current Saudi so-called scholars, they give fatwa telling you that we are in the Meccan period. We're not supposed to wage war. But somehow when Afghanistan was invaded by the Russians, it was no longer the Meccan period. Even though Russia killed 1 million civilians in Russia, they said go and wage jihad. Do you know why? Because the Saudi scholars call for jihad when the US calls it jihad. And when Afghanistan, the same country, by the way, was invaded by the US, they said the Taliban, they're a deviant group. And I don't know who they're fooling, these people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has exposed them. You don't have to be a scholar to know that what they're saying is wrong. When the US invaded Iraq, they never called for jihad. Why? Because the US did not call that jihad. So basically, this confederacy that the Prophet ﷺ partook in, this is something that any human being with a sound mind would partake in. Injustice is wrong, irrespective of who it's done to. Even if it's done to an animal, you're supposed to intervene and stop the injustice. So he ﷺ said, I witnessed a confederacy in the house of Abdullah bin Jad'an. It was more appealing to me than the herds of cattle. Even now, in the period of Islam, I would respond positively to attending such a meeting if I were invited. Well, obviously, the good Saudi scholars, they're in jail. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set them free because they spoke the truth. In fact, the spirit of the confederacy and the course of considerations therein marked a complete departure from the pre-Islamic tribal pride. Because before Islam, it was basically be with your tribe irrespective of what it does. If your tribe is doing injustice, you help it because it was a tribal society. Now, the story that led to this convention of this confederacy, in Arabic it's called Hilf al-Fudul, was that a man from the tribe or the clan of Zubayd came as a merchant to Mecca, where he sold some commodities to Al-As bin Wa'il al-Shami, one of the well-known leaders of Quraysh. So this leader of Quraysh avoided paying for the goods. So basically he took the goods and then he told the guy, do whatever you want. I'm not going to give you your money back. So the salesman sought help from some of his allies from the Quraysh, but they paid no heed to his earnest pleas because, Al-As bin Wa'il was one of the higher-ups in the society. So what he did, he went to a mountaintop and then he began at the top of his voice to recite verses of complaint, giving account of the injustices he sustained. Because the Arabs back then, they were very good in poetry. And this is the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Quran in Arabic letters, and also many, according to the correct scholarly opinion, the reason why many surah are started with the letters. For example, Alif Lam Mim, Alif Lam Mim Sad, Kahaf, Ya Ayn Sad, things like that. The scholars said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling the Quraysh, the Arabs at the time, not only Quraysh but all the Arabs, because they used to have some yearly festivals where all the poets of Arabia would come there and in the market of Uqad, and then they would put their poetry and would compete to see who's the best poet. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling them that you Arabs are so eloquent speakers in poetry, and your poetry is made up of these letters, Alif Lam Mim, etc. So the Quran is in the same language that you are so good at composing poetry with. So bring something like it if you are claiming that it's not from Allah. فَأْتُوا بِعَشْرِ سُوَرٍ مِثْلِهِ مُفْتَرَيَاتٍ وَادْعُوا مَنِ اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Bring like 10 surah like the Quran made up as you claim, because they said Muhammad sallam made up the Quran. And then the challenge was like, bring only one surah, just like Surah Al-Ikhlas. They couldn't, you understand? Because it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, Az-Zubair, the salesman from Zubayr basically composed poetry. So when people heard poetry, they were moved emotionally. And Az-Zubayr bin Abd al-Muttalib made inquiries into the matter, and then consequently the parties to the Confederacy convened their meeting and managed to force money for the man from Zubayr out of Al-As bin Wa'il. So this was the reason for forming this Confederacy. The next section is called Muhammad ﷺ's early occupation. So He ﷺ had no particular job at his early youth, but it was reported that he worked as a shepherd for Bani Sa'd and in Mecca for a wage. And subhanAllah, most prophets were shepherds, because caring for sheep teaches you how to deal with them in kindness and in gentleness, and how to bring them back to the herd with ease and with patience. Because sheep, if you scare them, they may actually die. So they're very fragile creatures. So that's why most of the prophets were actually shepherds. As we know, Musa alayhi salam, when he went to Madian, he married his wife, and in return, he was a shepherd for her father for 10 years. And at the age of 25, he ﷺ went to Syria as a merchant for Khadija radiallahu anha. Ibn Ishaq, as we said, Ibn Ishaq is one of the writers of the Sira of the Prophet ﷺ, reported that Khadija radiallahu anha, the daughter of Khuwaylid, was a businesswoman of great honor and fortune. Now, businesswoman doesn't mean that she went out to the marketplace and commingled with men. Because many women today, when they want to go and mix with men in the workforce, they tell you Khadija radiallahu anha used to work. No, she was a businesswoman in her home, and she used to have people trade with her money, just like as we're going to see she did with the Prophet ﷺ. So many women, they take Khadija radiallahu anha as an excuse for them to say it's halal in Islam for a woman to go and work alongside with men. It's not halal. Okay? We cannot change the religion, sorry, I know. Most women work, most women help their husbands, but sorry, we cannot change the religion. What's halal is haram, what's haram is haram. Women can work in certain domains, limited, if there's no mixing, if there is a need for it, if she has no kids to tend for. If she has kids to tend for, then someone else is raising her kids. And that's why her kids, when they grow up, if they send her to the senior's home, she should not blame anyone but herself. Because children, they get attached to their mother in their early years. If the mother takes them to daycare and she goes to work, she should expect these children are not going to be very loving and fond of her. They may be kind to her because she is their mother, but as far as feelings are concerned, this is an emotion that gets formed between the mother and children, especially in the first 6 years of their age. And by the way, I know I'm going off of the subject many times, but as we say in Arabic, الشيء بالشيء يذكر. One thing leads you to the other. I read with my own eyes a report that was done, compiled by the American Secret Service, CIA, FBI, etc., for President Obama when he first became president. Because every time a new president comes in the US, because the US is the leader of the world by force, a report has to be done to the president so he can know the state of the world that he is ruling. There's a section on China, a section on Iran, a section on Muslims, a section on this, and there was a section on Muslims. And I'm telling you, this is something I read with my own eyes. And it was actually a PDF format in the BBC. In the BBC website, that's where I got it from. In this section, they are saying, they're bringing the map of the Muslim world with color-coded according to the median age of the population. And they're saying that we have a problem in the Muslim world, that the median age of the population is very low. A lot of youth in the Muslim age, around 25 years old. And this poses a danger for any person, the enemy of any country that has a lot of people. China has 1 billion people, India has about 1 billion people. If anyone has a lot of people, a lot of soldiers, it's a country to be reckoned with. So they said, in order for us to solve this problem, to them this is a problem. To them this is a problem. In order for us to solve this problem, we need to encourage the women to go to work. Because if we do that, we're going to achieve 2 goals. The first goal is that the woman is not going to give birth to a lot of children. This is number 1. It's normal. A working mom, she's not going to have time to have a lot of children, right? The second goal that's going to be achieved is that we are going to raise her children. And that's why you go to the schools in the Muslim land, what they are teaching the children is something they don't even teach the people here in the West. Teach them the Darwin theory in the Muslim land, that we used to be monkeys. This is in Muslim lands. So when a woman goes to work, she's not doing what Allah created her for. Allah created Adam and Eve. If Allah want to create only man, then there's no need for Eve, right? Not only that, but subhanAllah, there's something that maybe many people didn't think about it. The feminists that say that we want equality for women, we want a woman to work the same as men. You know why they say that, these feminists? Because they look down at the woman's role in the society as a home carer. They tell her, if you want to have any worth in the society, you have to do what a man does. Because you are nothing if you don't do what a man does. You have to work like a man. You have to do like a man. So these feminists, intuitively, they are telling the woman that if you stay at home and do what Allah created you for, you're not as good as a man. You have to be like a man because a man is better than you. So they actually think that they are defending women, but they're demeaning the woman. Because they're bringing her from the comfort of her home where Allah created her so that she can raise the next generation. And this is actually something that the Jews have understood. I just saw one of their leaders a couple of days ago justifying why they are killing the women and children in Palestine. They said it very clearly. They said, these children that we're killing today, if we let them live, they'll grow up to become Hamas members. And the women we're killing today, they're the ones who are giving birth to the future Hamas members. Clearly, in 2 words. And of course, they can say that, for them, there's no such thing as genocide, human rights, etc. The pen is lifted on them. They can do anything they want. So by bringing the woman out of her home, the Muslim society has gotten to the level of evil that we have gotten to today. And therefore, when we talk that we want Allah to remove the humiliation from us and that we need to go back to the religion, we have to go back to religion in everything. Look at our forefathers. They were the leaders of mankind for centuries until about 100 years ago. Just look at the way they used to live, the nucleus of the family. I mean, now not only that, but now they've gone a step further to, when the woman went out of her home, they replaced her by men. And this is homosexuality. Did you ever think about it? The woman went out of her house. She no longer want to do the chores and do what she's supposed to do. So now there's this new trend that they're replacing her by other men. This is what this led to. The fact that women went out of her house and she did not raise her kids. This is actually indirectly led to this homosexuality that we're seeing and all this call to, changing the creation of Allah to whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like. So we're going to stop here. I'm sorry, like today, the lesson was not on the Sira, but it's the important thing from the Sira is to recognize our mistakes and try to fix them, right? Because he alayhi salam was the best of mankind. His life was the best model. So this is the reason why. So I thank you for your patience. If you have any questions, you can